My daughter tried to kick me out, so I sold the house before she could. I was sitting in my old armchair, the one Carol and I bought when we finally paid off the mortgage in '96, my legs covered with the crocheted blanket she made during her last winter. It was mid-April, but the evenings still had a chill, and my joints had a way of reminding me that 75 winters leave their mark. On the coffee table in front of me were two things: a cup of decaf cooling beside a photo album of Emily's first-grade art projects, and the cordless phone, its red light blinking faintly. I'd just gotten off a call with Emily, my only daughter, who told me she and Douglas were headed to a business dinner in the city and would be home late. The kind of vague excuse I'd stopped questioning. I smiled to myself, flipping a page to a glitter-covered picture of our house, drawn by 6-year-old Emily. My home with Daddy and Mommy. It read, her crooked letters proud and unfiltered. A lump formed in my throat. I closed the album gently and reached for the phone to hang it up properly when I heard something. Voices. The line was still open. I froze. Did he hang up? Douglas's voice came through first, muffled but clear enough to send a spike of ice down my spine. I don't know. Probably. Emily replied, the warmth I had just heard in her voice now drained and cold. He's watching the History Channel or organizing his stamps or whatever it is he does all day. He doesn't even notice when we're gone. They thought I couldn't hear. They thought I wasn't listening. But I was. And I heard everything. If he won't sign, we'll just push him. He's barely aware anyway. The lake house is our chance to finally start over. Douglas whispered, like a man planning a robbery. Push me? Push me into what? Emily sighed. We've got to be careful. If he gets suspicious, he might call that lawyer again. And we can't afford any more delays. That house could go for nearly $1 million now if we move fast. Summer's around the corner. Douglas laughed quietly, then added, he keeps talking to himself in the kitchen. Half the time he forgets what day it is. We'll frame it as a health intervention. Put a brochure in front of him. Get the doctor to say he needs supervision. It'll look like we're just trying to take care of him. I hate that kitchen, Emily muttered. It's like walking into a time capsule. That avocado-colored stove? Hideous. But once it's gutted and staged, we'll get asking price or better. I couldn't move. My fingers tightened around the phone, my knuckles white. They were talking about my home. The one Carol and I built board by board, paycheck to paycheck. The one where Emily learned to walk, where we buried our dog under the maple tree in the backyard, where we held every Thanksgiving for 30 years. And they were planning to get rid of me like an expired lease. Douglas's voice dropped again, this time lower, more menacing. He's just sitting on it, Emily. $1 million, and he's using it to watch reruns and heat up soup. If he dies in there, the taxes alone will choke us. You want to raise our kids in a shoebox apartment forever? Or do you want that house on the lake? I'm just tired, Emily replied. Tired of babysitting him. Tired of pretending. He's not the man he used to be. He's slow. Confused. There was silence. And then, this part I'll never forget. I'm sorry, Mom, Emily whispered. Then she laughed. God help me, my daughter laughed. The same laugh that used to ring out when I pushed her on the tire swing behind the garage, when she rode her bike for the first time down Maple Hill Road. That laugh now sounded like a nail being driven into my chest. I mean, it's kind of poetic, isn't it? She said. He spent his life fixing other people's houses. Now we're going to sell his. Douglas chuckled. I'll call the realtor in the morning. Just keep him cooperative for a few more weeks. If he starts asking questions, tell him it's about safety. He trusts you. Of course he trusts me, Emily said. I'm his little girl. That was the last thing I heard before the line went dead. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful, it was screaming. It filled every corner of the house. I looked around at the walls I painted with Carol one summer when we couldn't afford to travel. At the sofa she'd insisted we recover instead of replace. At the rug where Emily spilled grape juice when she was 4 and cried for hours because she thought we'd be mad. I looked at the room and saw ghosts. Not of the dead. Of the living. Of everything I thought I still had. Something in me cracked. No, shifted. A piece of my heart, perhaps the part that believed my daughter still saw me as her father, not a financial burden, split clean down the middle. But there was something underneath it. Not anger. Not yet. Clarity. A cold, clear understanding that I was alone in this house, and that the people I thought loved me were circling like vultures. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I stood up straight, looked around the room, and said aloud, not yet. You don't get to write me off. Not while I'm still breathing. They had made one mistake. They thought I was too old to fight back. They had no idea who they were dealing with. After Carol passed, the house got too quiet, but I stayed. I had no reason to leave. It was the only home I'd ever built with my own hands. We bought the lot in 1983 for $12,400, a patch of nothing with weeds up to my knees, and turned it into a home with a red door, a sloping porch, and love in every corner. Every plank, every fixture, every crack in the tile bore our fingerprints. Even after she died, I could still hear Carol humming while folding laundry in the den. I kept the dented kettle she loved and her faded apron with the paint stain from when Emily was in second grade. That house was our story, one long and patient sentence written over 4 decades. When Emily asked to move in temporarily, I didn't hesitate. Douglas had just lost his job. Something about layoffs at the bank, or maybe it was downsizing, I don't remember exactly. They had 2 kids, Evan and Lily, both under 10 at the time. I thought, what kind of father turns his daughter away in times like this? So I cleared out the guest room, aired the linens, stocked the fridge with the organic milk she liked. She thanked me with a peck on the cheek and a smile that reminded me of when she was little, asking for one more bedtime story. That was 2 years ago. They told me it would be 3 months, 6 at most, until Douglas got back on his feet. I didn't ask for rent. I paid the utilities, kept the lights on, and even continued my Saturday morning ritual of cooking pancakes. Carol used to call them Dad's floppy disasters, but the grandkids liked them just fine. We'd have Sunday breakfasts, just like in the old days. I'd make scrambled eggs and bacon. Emily would sip coffee at the kitchen island. The kids would fight over syrup. Sometimes Douglas even joined in, though he always brought his phone to the table and never looked up unless the Wi-Fi cut out. Still, I thought we were making something like a family again. I fooled myself into thinking I was needed. Evan would sit next to me while I watched old war documentaries and ask questions about tanks and uniforms. Lily liked to help me in the garden, pulling up weeds and giggling when she unearthed a worm. On her 7th birthday, I built her a wooden jewelry box with her initials carved in the lid. She kissed my cheek and said, "You're the best grandpa in the world." And for a while, I believed that was enough. I told myself, let them stay. They're struggling. What's money compared to family? But slowly, without ceremony or acknowledgement, something began to shift. Douglas started staying out later. He never said where he went, just left in the evening and came back smelling like cologne and car exhaust. Emily would cover for him, saying he was networking or exploring options. He wasn't looking for work. He was waiting for something to fall into his lap. And apparently, that something was my house. I didn't see it then. I saw only what I wanted to see, my family, reunited under one roof, building new memories. Even when Emily stopped doing laundry or cleaning up after her kids, I didn't mind. I'd always been tidy. Carol used to joke that I was born with a broom in my hand. So I swept the floors, loaded the dishwasher, took out the trash. I thought it was part of being a good father, a good grandfather. That's what men of my generation did. We carried the weight without complaint. When I fell one morning while reaching for a box in the attic, Emily looked up from her phone and said, "Dad, you shouldn't be climbing ladders at your age." I thought it was concern. But now, thinking back, I realized she didn't offer to help. She just filed the moment away like it was evidence. She started keeping a list on the fridge. Reminders for Dad. Things like, take your blood pressure meds, or don't leave the stove on. It felt condescending, but I let it slide. I thought, she's just being careful. She worries. That's all. But the reminders multiplied. Douglas suggested getting one of those pill organizers so you don't mix anything up. Emily started locking certain drawers because the kids are curious. I stopped being the man of the house. I was becoming the fragile vase everyone moved around so it wouldn't fall off the table. Still, I said nothing. I kept cooking, cleaning, and paying the bills. When Evan asked me for help on his school project about World War II, I pulled out old books, maps, even the uniform my father had worn in the Pacific. Evan's eyes lit up. We stayed up until midnight working on his presentation. The next morning, Douglas said, "That's cute. Old man still got a few neurons firing." He laughed. I didn't. But I swallowed my pride. Because I still believed we were family. I'd saved for decades to make this house a place where my daughter and her children could always feel safe. A place where I could grow old with dignity, maybe plant tomatoes again in the summer, Maybe hang a swing for the grandkids on the old oak branch Carol had always said was perfect for one. And maybe, just maybe, I'd get to hear Emily say thank you. But that word never came. Instead, I began to feel like a guest overstaying my welcome in the house I'd built. At night, I'd lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering when everything shifted. Wondering if I'd missed the moment when love turned into convenience, when duty turned into resentment. I never heard Carol's voice in the house anymore. Just the echo of dishes being slammed into the sink, Douglas's complaints about the Wi-Fi, the kids being shushed when they asked too many questions. One night, I sat in the garage, going through a box of Carol's letters, and I found one addressed to Emily, written during her final hospital stay. It was never sent. The envelope was sealed, but the paper had yellowed slightly. I debated opening it, but something told me not to. Instead, I sat there, listening to laughter from inside the house. Not mine, not even the grandkids. Douglas and Emily, laughing at something on the TV. And I thought to myself, for the first time in my life, maybe I don't belong here anymore. Maybe I'm not the one who needs to leave. Maybe it's them. It didn't happen all at once. There wasn't a thunderclap or a slammed door. Just little things, like drips from a leaking faucet. Annoying at first, then corrosive, and eventually impossible to ignore. Douglas stopped saying hello when he came home. At first, I thought maybe he was having a rough day. Then I noticed he wasn't forgetting. He was choosing not to. I'd nod from my recliner, and he'd breeze past me like I was part of the furniture. No, hi, Roy. No, how was your day? Not even eye contact. Emily began using a tone I hadn't heard since she was a teenager in braces. Short, impatient, clipped like she was dealing with a slow bank teller. She'd ask me things in that voice. Did you take your pills? Or you didn't touch the thermostat again, did you? Like I was an unpredictable pet, liable to pee on the carpet if left unsupervised. I noticed they started locking the liquor cabinet. Odd, since I hadn't touched a drop since Carol's funeral. The television password was suddenly changed. And when I asked about it, Emily said, it's just so the kids don't watch anything inappropriate. Inappropriate? I was the one who introduced her to Cary Grant movies. Carol and I had movie nights every Friday for 35 years. And now I needed permission to watch television in my own home? Still, I told myself they were stressed. Douglas hadn't found steady work since his stint in that real estate startup fizzled out. Emily was freelancing in digital marketing, whatever that meant. They had bills. The kids had braces coming up. I understood pressure. I'd worked 60-hour weeks pouring concrete in winter just to keep Emily in new shoes for school. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. I was walking past Emily's bedroom. She'd converted it into a home office now, when I heard her voice through the cracked door. She was on the phone, pacing. No, he's still coherent. But it's spotty, she said. I paused. She laughed, but it was the kind of laugh you do when you're annoyed, not amused. Yeah, I know. Yesterday, he asked me where Mom kept the turkey baster. Mom's been gone for 3 years. I think he thought it was Thanksgiving. I hadn't. I'd asked where the baster was because I'd dropped mine. And it was November. Carol always kept it in the second drawer next to the stove. I was just missing her. Emily kept talking. He forgets things all the time. I mean, what if it's Alzheimer's? Or dementia? I can't deal with that. I stepped back, careful not to make the floorboard creak. I don't know. Maybe we talked to Dr. Kerrigan about getting a recommendation. A memory specialist or something. Or at least someone who can tell us if he's still safe living here. I went to my room and closed the door quietly behind me. Alzheimer's? Me? I sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling, not because I was afraid, but because I understood. This wasn't concern. This was a campaign. I was being repositioned. Later that week, I overheard Emily talking to a friend on speakerphone while she folded laundry. God, it's like living with a human hourglass, she said. You never know when he's going to ask about Carol again or think he's supposed to pick me up from ballet class. Her friend laughed. You should really start documenting this stuff. Just in case. Oh, don't worry, Emily said. Douglas is already keeping a file. A file. They were collecting evidence against me. Preparing a case. Brick by brick, building a justification. I started watching how they looked at me, like I was on the edge of being a liability. The kind of look you give an old dog who limps too much to chase the ball anymore. I started second-guessing everything I said. Did I already mention that story about Carol's peach pie? Was I repeating myself? Had I called Evan by the wrong name? Did I forget to take out the trash, Or did someone move it before I could? They made me doubt my own memory. Douglas even left an article on the kitchen table one day, when to recognize the early signs of dementia in a loved one. Circled and underlined. He didn't say a word, just sipped his coffee and left the paper open like bait. Emily began suggesting I stop driving. Just until we get you checked out, she'd say. It's for your safety, Dad. And others. Others? I passed my last vision and reflex test at 74. The doctor said I had the blood pressure of a man 20 years younger. But none of that mattered now. One afternoon, I came in from the backyard to find Douglas in the living room with a clipboard. He was taking measurements. "What are you doing?" I asked. He looked up, startled, then smiled. A tight, oily thing that never reached his eyes. "Just planning a few updates. You know, if we ever decide to sell." "We?" I asked. He chuckled. "You know what I mean." But I didn't. And I didn't like it. I walked past the hallway mirror later that day and didn't recognize the man I saw. Not because I looked older, but because I looked smaller. Like someone who'd been slowly pushed to the edge of the frame. That night, I went to bed early and stared at the ceiling, Carol's pillow still beside mine. I whispered into the dark, "I think they're trying to erase me." And the house, as always, stayed silent. But I felt it. The first tremor of the storm that was coming. It was a Thursday afternoon when it happened. I'd just finished fixing the kitchen faucet, which had started dripping again. Douglas's job, technically. But as usual, it was easier for me to just take care of it. I was wiping my hands on a dish towel, thinking about lunch, when the landline rang. A rare event these days. No one calls house phones anymore unless it's a telemarketer or a doctor's office. Out of habit, I picked it up and froze. I didn't realize Emily was already on the line. She must have called out and accidentally tapped the second handset, or maybe one of the kids had left it off the hook. Either way, I heard her mid-sentence, her voice unmistakable, her tone ice. "Left the stove on again yesterday. It's getting dangerous." My heart sank. She wasn't talking to me. She hadn't even known I was there. "Honestly, we have to do something. Dad needs to be placed somewhere. And the house, if we sell by summer, we can finally buy the one with the valley view." The words didn't hit all at once. They arrived slowly, like raindrops through a leaking roof, soaking in before you realize you're drenched. "Douglas says we need to act before he starts getting suspicious. I'm already looking into care homes. Nothing too fancy, just enough to keep him safe. We'll frame it as a health issue, something responsible. He trusts me. My own daughter. The girl who used to crawl into bed with me after nightmares. The one who called me her hero on Father's Day in 2004. The child who asked me to walk her down the aisle with tears in her eyes. She was plotting to ship me off like an old appliance and sell the roof over my head. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. Her voice continued, oblivious to my presence on the other end. "Once we sign the papers, it'll all go fast. The market's hot. We'll be out of here and into Boulder by July if we push it. Dad won't even realize what happened until he's unpacking his things in a nursing room." She laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not a sad laugh. A triumphant one. Douglas's voice joined in. "Don't feel guilty," he said. "You've been more than generous. He's had a good run. This is about your family now, our future." I pressed the receiver harder against my ear, almost painfully. Emily responded, "He's old. It's not like he needs a 4-bedroom house with a garden. He barely uses the upstairs anymore. And honestly, I can't keep doing this. Every time I see his slippers in the hallway, I don't want to be his nurse. I want to live again." "Exactly," Douglas said. "This is the humane thing. And the smart thing. Humane. Smart. As if what they were planning was an act of kindness. As if they weren't talking about exiling me from the home where I buried Carol's ashes in the backyard, under her favorite rose bush. My fingers curled around the phone like a vice. I could hear blood rushing in my ears. "I already found a buyer," Emily continued. "A friend of Douglas's. They'll make a cash offer if we can get Dad's signature. If not, we'll get medical documentation to show he's not fit to make decisions." My knees buckled slightly, and I sank into the kitchen chair. The same chair Emily used to sit in while I braided her hair before school. The same table where we'd carved pumpkins and shared Sunday dinners and cried when Carol died. She was selling the house. My daughter was planning to declare me incompetent. "Just don't say anything yet," Emily said. "Let him think everything is fine. Keep smiling, keep making his tea, laugh at his dumb jokes. It's only a few more weeks." Click. The line went dead. But the damage was done. I sat in silence for what felt like hours. The walls around me, once filled with warmth and life, now echoed with betrayal. I looked across the kitchen at the window above the sink. The curtains were open, sunlight spilling across the counter. For a moment, I could see Carol's reflection in the glass. Just a trick of the light, but it stayed with me. Her presence. Her warning. I got up slowly and walked into the living room. The family photo still hung on the wall. Carol in her Sunday dress. Emily in a yellow Easter bonnet. Me in a cheap suit with my hand on her tiny shoulder. I stared at it for a long time. And I knew. This wasn't just ingratitude. This wasn't just selfishness. This was erasure. Emily and Douglas weren't just trying to take the house. They were trying to take my dignity, my legacy, my name. They were planning to reduce me to a signature, a burden, a locked room in a facility where they could visit once a month for appearances, while they lived large on the proceeds of my life's work. And worst of all, they were going to smile while they did it. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. But something inside me turned to stone. My heart didn't break. It hardened. 2 days after I heard Emily's betrayal spill through the phone like venom, I sat across from her and Douglas at the kitchen table, pretending not to know. I stirred my tea slowly, letting the spoon clink against the porcelain. The sound was steady, but my chest felt like it was full of broken glass. They were trying to play me gently now. I could tell. Douglas smiled too much. That insincere kind of smile you wear when you're trying to sell someone something they don't need. And Emily, she avoided eye contact, kept fiddling with her phone. The same hands that used to hold on to mine in grocery store parking lots were now trembling with guilt, or maybe anticipation. So, Douglas said casually, resting his elbows on the table like we were old poker buddies, have you ever considered how peaceful it might be for you in a place with full-time care? I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. The man was wearing a watch I'd bought him for his last birthday, $300, engraved with, "To Douglas, family first." A mistake. A damn joke now. He continued. You know, somewhere with medical staff, where you wouldn't have to worry about stairs or stove knobs, or, well, any of that stuff. Emily chimed in then. You're always so tired, Dad. It could be good for you. You'd have people your age to talk to, activities, safety. They weren't asking. They were maneuvering me. I watched their eyes. Douglas couldn't stop glancing toward the folder on the countertop. I already knew what was in it. Listings of retirement facilities, pamphlets about elder care, probably even a few pre-filled application forms. I imagined the page that said, Power of Attorney, sitting underneath all that. I smiled politely, sipped my tea, and said, You two really have been thinking about me, haven't you? Emily's smile wavered. She probably thought I meant it. Probably thought the old fool had no idea what was coming. You deserve peace, Dad, she said. You've worked your whole life. Let us take care of things now. Work my whole life. Those words stuck in my throat like sawdust. I looked around the kitchen. There was the spot where Carol dropped a mixing bowl while trying to make Emily's third-grade birthday cake. We never replaced the tile, said it gave the room character. There was the smudge on the ceiling from when I burned a turkey in 2007. The kids called it Thanksgiving smoke, and we laughed about it every year. Now, all of it was disposable. Now, I was disposable. I stood up slowly, placing my mug in the sink with deliberate care. Thanks for thinking of me, I said, turning my back to them. I'll keep it in mind. The silence that followed was thick and awkward. I could feel them staring, trying to figure out whether their little act had landed. That night, I heard their bedroom door close, and then I went into the living room. I sat in the dark. No TV, no lights, just me and the sound of the grandfather clock ticking like a countdown. I imagined what would come next. The little nudges. The paperwork casually left on the dining table. The doctor's appointment where Emily would come along and ask a few questions on my behalf. The therapist or social worker I'd be encouraged to speak with. And then the day they'd drive me somewhere quiet and clinical with potted plants in the lobby and plastic tablecloths in the cafeteria. Where someone would call me Mr. Carson instead of Dad. Where I'd be given pills I didn't need and schedules I didn't ask for. I saw it all as clearly as if it had already happened. They weren't just trying to evict me from my home. They were trying to erase me. To rewrite me as an old man in the way, too foggy to realize his daughter was liquidating his life for a down payment. And somehow, in their minds, this was love. I went upstairs to my room, closed the door, and locked it. Then I cried. I hadn't cried in years. Not since Carol's last night in the hospice bed we'd set up in the living room. But that night, I wept like a child. Not because they were trying to take the house, but because they had already taken the one thing I thought I'd never lose. My daughter. It was past midnight when I opened the closet in the hallway and pulled out the box. It hadn't been touched in years. Carol used to call it my sentimental stash. Old receipts, retirement records, family letters, the things most men toss out, but I kept like heirlooms. She said I was a historian at heart, always cataloging the past so it wouldn't disappear. At the time, I thought she meant it as a joke. But now, I saw it for what it was, a warning. I carried the box into the kitchen and laid the contents across the table. The light above the stove hummed, casting a dim golden glow over what was left of my legacy. Here, Emily's wedding invoice. $30,548.43, paid in full by check and 3 separate credit cards. I remembered the look on her face when I handed her the envelope with the final balance. You shouldn't have, she'd said. I couldn't have, I replied, but I did anyway. Here, 4 years of college tuition receipts from the University of Washington. $12,000. Then $14,000. Then $15,600. Then $18,000. I worked the night shift that entire 4th year. $8 store ramen and drove a car with no heat through 2 winters. Just so she could graduate debt-free. Here, her first car loan application. My signature next to hers. She was 21, working part-time at a bookstore, couldn't get approved on her own. I didn't hesitate. One by one, I laid out the paper trail of a father's love. Loan statements, dance recital tickets, swim meet photos, even a hand-drawn card she made in the 3rd grade that read, "To the best daddy in the world. I'll take care of you when you're old." The irony sliced me open. I picked up one of the more recent documents, last month's bank withdrawal slip. $2,000 for urgent car repairs after Douglas's latest financial blunder. Not the first time, not even the 5th. I remembered him patting me on the back that day. "You're a saint, Roy. Seriously, we'll get back on our feet soon. You'll see." But they had no intention of standing on their own feet. They wanted to stand on mine. I sat back in the kitchen chair and looked around the room. Every item had a story. The table with a burn mark from a birthday candle that tipped over when Emily turned 10. The wall where Carol once painted sunflowers because she said the room felt too cold in winter. The refrigerator covered in drawings from Evan and Lily, each one signed with "Love you, Grandpa." Was this the burden they spoke of? Was this the man they were plotting to lock away? Outside, the wind picked up, and the old maple in the backyard rustled like it was whispering to me. I looked at Carol's photo on the mantel, her smile forever frozen in that summer dress she loved. The same one she wore the day we planted the rose bush in the backyard. Her bush. Her garden. Her house. Our house. And in that moment, the tears stopped. Because the grief had done its job. It had cleared the path for something else. Resolve. If they didn't want me in their future, I would not be part of it. But they would not get my past. I stood up slowly, knees aching but spine straight. They thought I was losing control, but I was about to show them just how much of it I still had. No one, not even my daughter, was going to take away the life I built. If they were planning a quiet takeover, then I would orchestrate a quiet exit. And when they came back from whatever trip or errand they'd used to distract me next, they'd find the locks changed and the door closed behind them. Permanently. The next morning, I was up before the sun. Emily and Douglas were still sleeping. I could hear the faint thrum of their white noise machine from the hallway. $200 to simulate ocean waves while they dozed off in my house, under my roof, on my dime. I brewed a pot of coffee, black and strong, the way Carol always made it. I drank it slowly in the garage while watching the lights spill over the backyard. The garden was still sleeping, too, but the rose bush was budding. Carol's rose bush. I went to the drawer where I kept old business cards and pulled one out. Nick Garrison, an old Army buddy, now a real estate agent. We'd served together in Okinawa in '71. He helped me buy this house. Said it was the smartest investment I ever made. I dialed the number. Roy Carson. Came the familiar voice, still sharp, still carrying that rasp from a lifetime of cigars and honesty. "Nick, you still selling?" I never stopped. "I need to list the house." Quietly. Fast. He didn't ask questions. Never did. By 9 a.m., Nick was in my living room. While Emily and Douglas worked from upstairs, code for sleeping off late-night wine. Nick and I sat at the kitchen table with floor plans and comps. "You're lucky," he said, tapping the estimate sheet with a calloused finger. "Inventory's tight. Single story, big backyard, full basement. This is gold." "Cash buyer," I said. "No contingencies. No time for negotiations." Nick nodded. "I've got someone. Seattle tech exec. Wants to move to wine country. Needs a place for his mother. You'd be doing him a favor." "How fast?" "3 days. Tops." "Done." We shook hands. No paperwork. Just trust. Nick handled everything. Photos, listing, inspections. I made myself invisible during the process, careful not to raise suspicion. Emily and Douglas were too busy to notice. They thought I was out buying fertilizer for the garden, and I let them think it. While they were out on a business lunch, I met with a mobile notary on the patio. She handed me the pen. I signed the documents with steady hands. Sale price, $910,000. No contingencies. Close in 72 hours. By sunset, the house was no longer mine, and they didn't even know. I packed what mattered: Carol's photo albums, my tools, the cedar box she kept her letters in, a few clothes, my books, a half-dozen heirlooms tucked into moving blankets. Everything else, I left. The house was never just walls to me. It was memories. They came with me. I found a one-bedroom apartment in Santa Rosa, small, quiet, clean. A view of the hills. It reminded me of Carol's favorite vacation spot in Mendocino. The rent was fair, the neighbors polite. And for the first time in years, the air felt light. I furnished it with care. My old armchair. Carol's needlepoint cushions. I didn't need much. Peace doesn't require square footage. Then I made 2 final purchases. First, a surveillance camera disguised as a reading lamp. It sat innocently on the entryway table of the old house, plugged in before I left. It uploaded to a secure cloud drive. Every visitor, every reaction, every second. Just in case. Second, a new lock system. High-security deadbolts. Reinforced strike plates. Installed the morning after closing. Emily and Douglas wouldn't know it until it was too late. Before I left, I walked room to room, one last time. Carol's laugh still echoed in the hallway. I could almost see little Emily running barefoot across the tile floor, trailing glitter and glue from a school project. I placed my hand on the kitchen counter and whispered, "Thank you." Then I taped the letter to the inside of the front door. It was short, precise, devastating. When they returned, the door would open just enough to reveal the truth. And no further. I took the last box to the car, locked the door behind me, and left without looking back. For once, it was my decision. And it felt good that IT happened on a Thursday. They'd gone off on another one of their business trips, some vague real estate seminar in Sacramento, supposedly. Left in a rush that Monday, no goodbye kiss, not even a text. Just a fridge full of their leftovers and a note asking me to water the Monstera plant Emily couldn't be bothered to move out of direct sunlight. Perfect. That gave me 3 full days. The sale closed Wednesday morning. By Thursday afternoon, the funds had cleared into my account. I sat in my new place, an old jazz record playing low, while I sipped from the same chipped mug Carol once used every morning for tea. Outside, hummingbirds hovered over the balcony geraniums. Inside, peace reigned. Then came the alert. Motion detected, front door. I opened the surveillance app on my phone and tapped into the live feed. There they were, Emily in designer sunglasses, Douglas fiddling with a suitcase. They looked tanned, relaxed, like vacationers returning from a weekend at the spa. Emily pulled her key from her purse and slipped it into the lock. It didn't turn. She tried again. And again. Her smile faded. "The key's stuck," she said, voice rising with confusion and irritation. Douglas stepped forward. "Let me see." He yanked at the knob like that would help, jiggled the key, then stepped back. Emily's frustration mounted. "What the hell?" she muttered. "Did the lock jam?" "Check the back," Douglas said, already walking around the side of the house. "Maybe the sliding door." I grinned. I'd left the kitchen window unlatched, just slightly. Enough to tempt them. Emily stayed at the front, trying to reach me on her phone. I watched the call come through, let it ring twice, then declined it. A minute later, the feed switched to the interior camera, the living room, just beyond the entryway. Douglas was inside now. His shoes echoed on the hardwood floor. Emily followed close behind, red-faced and angry. "There's something wrong," she said. "All his stuff is gone. Where's the couch? The rug? The photo wall?" Then she saw it. The envelope, taped to the inside of the front door. Their names written in my steady block letters, Emily and Douglas. She stared at it like it was ticking. Douglas snatched it off the door and tore it open. I watched his eyes move side to side as he read. Watched the blood drain from his face. Emily stepped closer, voice sharp. What does it say? He read it out loud, whether for dramatic effect or because he didn't believe the words himself. I'll never know. You plan to get rid of me. You thought I didn't hear. The house is sold. The money is mine. Your things are in storage on Brook Hollow Road. You have 30 days. I gave you everything. You tried to erase me. You failed. Emily screamed. A sharp, involuntary sound, part rage, part disbelief. She crumpled the letter in her fist and threw it against the wall. You've got to be kidding me. Douglas turned in circles like he'd landed in someone else's nightmare. He kicked the baseboard hard enough to make the camera tremble. He planned this whole thing. Emily started pacing. We have nothing left. No house. No plan. What are we supposed to do now? She collapsed onto the bare floor, hands tangled in her hair. Douglas stood silently for a moment, then grabbed his phone, started dialing. My phone buzzed in my lap. I declined the call. Again and again. I watched them through the camera, shouting into the void. Their voices bounced off the empty walls. No carpet left to soak up the echo. No furniture. No family photos. Just empty space and the sound of everything falling apart. Their kingdom had crumbled, and I had done it without raising my voice. That I watched them through the feed for almost an hour. First came the disbelief, that wild-eyed confusion of people whose lives had been built on assumptions, assuming I was too weak, too old, too loyal to fight back. Then came the rage. Emily stormed through the empty rooms like she was searching for a trapdoor to reality. She yanked open closets and cabinets as if my decision could be reversed by finding a suitcase left behind. She paused in the hallway where the family photos used to hang, her hand grazing the wall like she was remembering something. Maybe a childhood memory. Maybe her own arrogance. Douglas was less sentimental. He pulled out his phone and started calling anyone he could think of. His mother. His lawyer. The man he thought was buying the house for him through a backdoor deal. I'd already canceled that handshake with Nick 2 days ago. I'd burned every bridge behind me and made sure they were the only ones standing in the smoke. They paced like trapped animals. Emily sat on the bare floor of the master bedroom, once mine and Carol's, now just drywall and echo. She finally pulled out her phone and dialed me directly. This time, I answered. Dad, she breathed. What is this? I didn't respond. You sold the house? Without telling us. You were going to put me in a facility, I said calmly. Without telling me. Her voice cracked. We were trying to help you. No, Emily. You were trying to erase me. And cash the check. There was silence. Then the sound of her sobbing. Not soft, regretful sobs, but angry, gasping ones. The kind that come from realizing a carefully constructed illusion has collapsed. Where are you? She asked. Somewhere I'm treated like a man, not an obstacle. Dad, we don't have anywhere to go. The kids. They're innocent, I cut in. And they're taken care of. There's a trust in their names. 10% of the sale each. But not you. Not Douglas. You can't do this, she said, panic rising now. This isn't fair. No, I said. What wasn't fair was plotting to put your own father in a home while planning what color backsplash you wanted in the new place. I let that sit. She tried to speak, but I hung up. Back on the camera, Douglas threw his phone at the wall. It shattered. Emily crumpled back onto the floor, hands over her face. Then, for the first time, they were quiet. Utterly, devastatingly quiet. Because they knew. The plan, the beautiful, self-serving plan they'd whispered about like schoolchildren sharing candy, it was gone. Dismantled. Outplayed. Their golden goose had flown the coop. I watched them walk out an hour later, defeated. Emily's shoulders slumped. Douglas dragging the rolling suitcase like a corpse behind him. They didn't even bother to close the door. But that was okay. I had already changed the locks. 3 days later, I sat in my new living room. It was smaller, modest, even. A one-bedroom apartment tucked into a quiet corner of Santa Rosa, with a view of sun-baked hills and a sycamore tree that shaded the patio just enough in the afternoon. The furniture was sparse. A recliner, a reading lamp, a kitchen table with only 2 chairs. But every piece had meaning. Carol's framed photo sat on the windowsill, catching the morning light just the way she liked it. Her tea set, chipped and faded from years of use, sat in a glass front cabinet by the sink. I'd even brought the old cuckoo clock she bought in Germany during our 25th anniversary trip. It still chirped at the hour, one bird call at a time, soft and insistent. The money had cleared. $910,000. Clean. Final. Irrevocable. I opened the bottle of wine Carol and I had saved for our 50th anniversary. We never got to share it. She passed just 2 weeks before. I'd kept it sealed ever since, unsure if I ever would open it at all. But that day felt right. I poured a single glass, sat back in my recliner, and raised a quiet toast to the silence. To peace. To survival. To finally being seen again. Not as a burden or a loophole or a silent cosigner, but as a man. I wasn't angry anymore. The anger had burned itself out somewhere between packing boxes and changing locks. What remained was something stronger. Calmer. Like steel. Emily and Douglas had spent the past week trying to reach me. Calls. Texts. Even an email with the subject line, "Please talk to us." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I'd arranged for their belongings to be transferred to a secure storage facility on Brook Hollow Road. 30 days paid in full. After that, the contents were theirs to manage. Or not. I'd already moved on. They never expected it. Not just the sale, but the strategy, the silence, the precision. They thought I was old. They thought I was soft. They forgot who raised them. Forgot who built that house, poured every foundation by hand, held 2 jobs so Emily could go to summer camp and get braces and piano lessons, even when I couldn't afford a new coat. They forgot that the man they tried to discard had nothing left to lose, and everything to protect. I didn't expose them. I didn't humiliate them on social media, or involve lawyers, or air grievances in public. I simply acted, because revenge doesn't always come with fireworks or fury. Sometimes, it comes in the form of a signed deed, a silent key change, and the absence of answers. I sat back and let the evening wash over me. No TV, no noise. Just the hum of the fridge and the soft clink of ice settling in a glass. I was free, and they were adrift. That wasn't cruelty. That was justice. That I never wanted revenge. Not really. What I wanted, what I deserved, was respect. Recognition. A place at the table I'd built with my own hands. But when those closest to you mistake kindness for weakness, when your years of sacrifice become invisible, and when your love is returned with calculation and silence, you're left with only 2 choices. Fade quietly, or stand up. I chose to stand, because somewhere along the way, I realized this was never about the house. It was about dignity, about being seen not as a stepping stone to someone else's happiness, but as a human being whose life still matters. To anyone out there feeling what I felt, overlooked, dismissed, pushed aside by the very people you gave everything to, hear me now. You are not a burden. You are not disposable. You are not furniture gathering dust in the corner of someone else's ambition. You have the right to protect what's yours, the right to draw a line, the right to act. Don't let guilt silence your instincts. Don't let shared DNA excuse betrayal. Family isn't who takes your house while you sleep. Family is who protects it with you. I gave my daughter everything she asked for: education, security, a home, unconditional support. And when she turned that into a strategy to remove me from my own life, I did the only thing left. I showed her I still had a spine. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do isn't yelling. It's closing a door and locking it behind you. So to the sons, daughters, and spouses who think aging parents are easy targets, be careful. We built this world for you, and we know where every foundation crack leads. Have you ever felt replaced by your own family? Have you had to fight quietly for your own space, your own worth? Tell me, you're not alone anymore. It was late. The kind of night where the world is hushed, and even the traffic outside my new apartment fades into nothing. I had just turned off the lamp, slipped beneath the quilt Carol had sewn our second Christmas together, and let my eyes drift shut. Then the phone rang. Not a text, not a voicemail, a call. The screen lit up with a name I once waited for like sunrise. Emily. For a moment, I didn't move. Then I picked it up and answered. I said nothing. There was a pause. Then her voice, small, raw. "Dad." I waited. "You ruined our lives." Just that. No apology. No explanation. No tears this time. Just blame. 3 seconds passed. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Waiting. Hoping, maybe, for a flicker of guilt. A crack in the wall. I didn't give it to her. I smiled. and hung up.